Alice Paul was born in Mount Laurel, New Jersey in 1885. She grew up on a farm, and her father was a very successful businessman who earned his family a comfortable living. Alice Paul was a Quaker and was raised to believe in gender equality. Her activism in the fight for women's rights can be credited to her religion. In 1907, she left for England, where she met Christabel Pankhurst. Pankhurst was speaking on the streets about women's suffrage, but was getting ridiculed by the crowd. She, her mother, and her sisters were all suffragists, and Alice Paul decided to join their movement. They felt that words were not enough, and they responded by taking other measures such as throwing rocks and breaking windows. Alice Paul herself broke over 48 windows and was arrested multiple times. Despite their imprisonment, they would still go on hunger strikes where they refused to eat. In 1910, Alice Paul returned to America and was determined to reshape the American campaign for women's rights. She joined the National American Women's Suffrage Association and became head of the committee. She went to Washington, D.C. and organized a publicity event to get national attention. It started as a parade, but things took a turn when males started attacking with insults and violence. The police saw and did nothing. Despite the unexpected turn, the march worked. Alice Paul and her group made headlines across the nation and became a popular topic of discussion. Alice Paul soon realized that despite her similar beliefs with the National American Women's Suffrage Association, she wanted different things than the association's president. Because of this, she formed the National Women's Party. The National Women's Party would stand outside of the White House and hold banners directed at the president. However, this continued as we entered World War I, and many saw this as unpatriotic, and mobs attacked them, and the suffragists were imprisoned. Despite this, they still continued their fight. Prison officials tried to declare Alice Paul insane and would forcibly feed her and torture the women. No matter what their age was, the suffragists were forcibly fed and beaten. To their advantage, poor prison conditions were learned about, and she and the suffragists were released. They gained many supporters because of sympathy, and this gave Alice Paul hope for her victory. Due to the public outcry about the abuse of the suffragists in prison, President Wilson announced his support for the suffrage amendment in 1917. In August of 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed, giving women equal rights to vote. While many suffragists were thrilled about the 19th Amendment, Alice Paul continued fighting for absolute equality. She worked on the Equal Rights Amendment until it was passed in 1972. This amendment stated that civil rights may not be denied because of one's gender. In 1885, Alice Paul died of congestive heart failure at the age of 92. Alice Paul was extremely active during the Progressive Era. She worked her whole life to reform how women were viewed and did everything in her power to get them equal rights.
On March 3, 1913, President-elect Woodrow Wilson arrived in Washington, D.C. for his inauguration, but the public's attention was elsewhere. 8,000 women had taken to the street on a march through the Capitol, demanding the right to vote. Onlookers jeered at them and threw things, but the nation took note. Alice Paul, a 28-year-old activist from New Jersey, had designed this media event to promote the cause of women's suffrage, and it worked. Alice Paul grew up near Moorestown in a Quaker family that believed in equality of the sexes. In 1917, she led silent protest in front of the White House, demanding women's right to vote. After 6 months, the protesters were arrested and jailed for blocking traffic. They went on hunger strike and were force-fed for weeks before their eventual release. Tactics like this built awareness and support for the cause. Alice Paul's greatest victory came in 1920, when the 19th Amendment enshrined a woman's right to vote. Until her death in 1977, she continued to fight for equal rights.